Hello, we are here for one more lesson of this idea architecture training course, and the topic for today will be working with coordinates and viewing your drawing. Starting with the coordinate side of the lesson. For accuracy in a drawing, we can locate specific points inside our drawing area. And with that purpose, we have not specifically a tool, but we have a capability inside IDEA, which is the work with coordinates. Many people don't learn and don't care about this side of the work with this type of software. But it's very important and makes you life a lot easier in some specific situations instead of just being focused in working with the snap facility. Okay, so the idea with the coordinates, we have two modes. We have first the Cartesian mode, and we have the polar mode. Starting with the Cartesian one. The Cartesian coordinate system uses three perpendicular axes to specify points in 3D space. Later we will see the third dimension side, so let us focus now in 2 dimensions. And you can see that we have our coordinate system here. We have the axis x and the y axis. Each one of those is represented in one specific color, and we have these in such a way that every location can be represented as a point, and it's relative to a special point called the origin, which has an absolute coordinate 0, 0, 0 in each one of the axes, because we have another one pointing to us, which is the z axis. Let us try to make something. So first line, and then we have the start of the line. We can pick a point, as you know, or we can specify a coordinate, and we can do this specifying relative to the origin the distance in the x and following the y axis. So I will say 0, comma 0, comma it's a point, sorry, in English. So I don't remember the name of English, but if you change the dialog box, so the first one is x, the second one is y. So 0, 0. I will take this out, okay? And you see that my origin is on the corner of this rectangle that I've done previously to have an idea of the scale factor that I'm working on. So first point 0, 0, I've done my this first point in the origin. So now I will say another point, and I can say again with coordinates, and this is Cartesian mode. So x followed by y. So I will say 100 in 100 in x, and comma, and now I will say 50 in y, and you see, let's try to, I will put a dimension, so linear, I will say from here to here, this is very small. See, we have 100, so it's 100 in the x direction, and we have this should be 50 because here it is 50 in y. So when we say these values, it's always relative to the origin. Okay, very easy. We can do another thing now. I will pick this point here, And I can use still the Cartesian mode, but this time instead of saying a number followed by another number, I can say, so again 100, and now I say again this dialog box, I will say 30. But if I say this now, it will take the origin again as the relative thought. But I want to take not this origin, but I want to take the last point as base. So for that, instead of doing a dimension and another dimension, I need to say the symbol at, see here on the dialog box, and now 100 and followed by 30. And you see now it took the last point as the temporary origin, and it make a point. So the idea here is Cartesian, you have the absolute mode that takes the origin as base, or relative mode that takes the last point as base. So this is quite easy to follow. Let me take this out. Another mode is the polar mode. And the polar mode, it's more or less the same, but instead of x and y, and we can have also the z axis on this, I can click now the first point. We have something called the polar mode, which allow us to give, for example, an angle, and then we have this sign that in my keyboard is around here. The sign, the mathematical sign for minor or major. So we have the minor sign, and we have the length of the vector, the sign, and the angle. So 45 at 30 degrees, and if we put a dimension also, angular this to this, even that is quite small, it should have, you see, 30 degrees. So the idea here is also the same. If we use only the numbers, it will consider always the origin as the base point. If on the other hand we say again the at sign first, and we say length of the vector 20, the minor sign, and then for example 10 degrees, you see it took the last point has the base temporary origin for creating this line in this particular case. So the coordinates, it works always like that. So this particular point, the origin, it's called the world coordinate system. We can see a couple of things around here. I can open the settings. Let me see, settings. We have the display tab. We can have US icon on or off, or on at UCS origin. So let me say this. So now it is located in my origin instead of being stopped here. If it is out of the view display, then it will fix in this particular point. So it's another nice functionality. And we can have also something called UCS, which are user coordinate systems, which we can have for temporary work. So if I create one user coordinate system, I can place it somewhere and I can work in the exact same way as I've done here, and it will be the origin for the system, this temporary system. So we will see that in a couple of seconds. So we have this both, we can manage this, so it's very interesting and quite simple to work with these two entities. Before, I'd like to mention a tool that we can find inside Tools menu. Then we have this inquiry, and we have something called ID coordinates or ID point. This ID point, we can select a point and you see the coordinates x, y, z. Okay, this is something that has to do still with the coordinates. That's why I was mentioning about this possibility. Regarding now the coordinate systems, still inside Tools menu, we have a group called UCS. We have a lot of UCS. We can create new coordinate systems. We have a lot of functions inside. For example, we can select a preset system, okay? And this is a little, it repeats a lot of functions in some of these options. In this function in particular, we have also things connected with the 3D side of the system, so I will not mess a lot with this part now. Let us see the more regular functions on the 2D side for the moment, okay? So creating one simple user coordinate system, for example, the origin, I can pick a point and simply it will follow the regular orientation of the system. So it was here, now I have one user system. I can manage this for sure because it may be interesting for me to save it for future use. So I can manage this. For example, coordinate systems. I can save it. For example, I can create a new one, a new UCS, and I can create it, for example, and give it a name, call it UCS 1, doesn't matter. And I can activate it if I want. Okay, in this particular case it is in the same orientation as the world, but I can go there and create a new one, and now I can save it. I can do it UCS 2. I can manage this. Okay, it is now on, and if I go, for example, activate the world coordinate system, you see that I go from one to the other. So a lot of these functions here basically are options and repeat themselves, because I can go on that table and choose the world coordinate from here directly, or I can go in the list and activate it as I've done. And I have all these options to create new systems and manage these things. I can go to the previous one, so on. World, it's the standard that comes with the system. I can choose one object and it will follow the orientation of the object. I can choose it by a view. The origin we've seen already. We can choose the z-axis vector, more connected to 3D side. 3 points, I can choose any particular orientation to choose this. So I can say the origin here, the x and the Y, so it will make something like this. The Y is just mentioning if it is positive for the side we choose, not the particular orientation of the point we give. And we can rotate around each one of these axes. So for example, rotating around Z, we can say, for example, rotate 10 degrees, and on the system we have now, we can apply rotation. So this is how to manage this, quite easy and very interesting. Maybe it was interesting just before we end this topic, just to mention trying to call, okay, we have it here, manage, and to see one topic which I think it is interesting. Let us activate the UCS2, and if you see the coordinates here, you see when I'm going near the origin, you see 0, 0 on X and Y. So if we work with the standard coordinates, as I mentioned before, we will be acting according to this particular point. Now regarding viewing your drawing, a couple of functions also. IDEA provides many ways to display and view your drawing. It's a normal CAD standard with standard functions, so there is not very groundbreaking tools. It's normal to every tool of this type. We can display or we can change some settings of the display to speed up this, but basically we have a couple of things like inside view menu we have things like the redraw, after not the case in this particular drawing, but when we work with entities around, sometimes the display is not properly updated, so if we do simply a redraw, it will refresh our display, so quite easy and useful. We have another function that we can find also, and a lot of these things we have them in menus, but sometimes it's easier to work around here with our mouse. For example, the pen, we have a lot of things, but the pen is something that if you click in your mouse wheel and keep it and drag it, you can have this kind of effect. At the same time, we have a lot of functions for the zoom. Okay, they are interesting for sure, but this mixture of the pen and the possibility also in our mouse to rotate and do this zoom in, zoom out, I would say that is more than enough to deal with the display of your drawings. Okay, we have also some functionalities like inside view we have this 3D orbit. We have this free orbit, and what we can do is something like this. Okay, not the case we are working for the moment in 2D, but as you can see, and I hadn't shown until now, you see the Z axis in blue. We can create a 3D perspective of your drawing. Okay, so this is a little different from what we have seen until now. Again, we will come back to this later on in this course, so for now just mentioning that we have this 3D perspective of the drawing. I can create also viewpoints of this. We have the standard views. I will recall the top view, so, and I will go back to my previous mode, and ending just to say that we have also an interesting mode here, still inside view menu, which are the viewports. So we have something like tiled viewports, and we can have some management out of this. So we can split this in two viewports, so we can choose from horizontal or vertical, I would say like this, and we have one view at a time, that is the active one. Okay, whatever we do in one view, it will be done in both, because these are different views of the same drawing. And it is very interesting, especially if you have large monitors. We can have these particular views connected, and it will speed up your drawing. The management that we can make out of this, it's we can split this in several definitions, and then we can save the settings, or for example we can delete or join particular views. So it's I think quite easy to manage these viewports. So basically, to not go longer in this video, I hope that these main ideas for this lesson were clear enough to give you a couple of more tools. Any questions about these topics, you can contact us, and we are here for whatever support you may need in these functions or others that